Welcome to selfdiscoverymedia.com, where we discover the communities that are making a difference in the lives of others. Our self-discovery is something we are all making on our life's journey. Here you will find the people that will be your guidance, that will be your inspiration, that will be there for you in support on your journey of life. Do enjoy. Our next show is... Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Ignite Your Heart and Soul right here on selfdiscoverymedia.com. I'm your host, Sarah Troy, and my wonderful repeat guest, we always love having her back, is An Nichols George. She goes by An now, so we're going to be calling her that today. This is another show in her wonderful Code Journey edition. She's done a Code Journey edition for 22. She did one for 21. She is dedicated just to channeling what we need to know for the coming year, what philosophies are going to be there. We really do hope that next year is going to be, or this year, 2022, is going to be a lot calmer year and more productive and kind of really something that's more in fluidity. And she says that each year, that she brings this book of wisdom out and that she channels, she hopes that it's going to be a greater year of unity, a coming together. And we really do hope that is what it is. So what do we have in store for us? Well, An is a Magi walk-in from multi-universe. She stepped into this existence to receive another soul known as Jessie. She continues to use the human name of the body, Jessie An Nichols George, but goes by the name An. And Jessie and An are a part of the same Maggie team, which work to assist people in living compassionately, wisely, harmoniously. Their work helps people to open up their consciousness to the wholeness and how they are existing. And through the human vehicle, Jessie and An have created 8 books on their own. And with the 9th to be released later on, Jessie has, this must be the 10th book then. Is this the 10th book?
Let's see here. On my own, there's 4, and this will be the 9th.
9th book. Okay.
2022 is the 9th on my own.
Okay. And it's coming out, came out last year for 2022.
Yes.
And Jessie is also a collaborator on the international multiple bestseller in multiple categories, Embraced by the Divine, The Emerging Woman's Gateway to Passion, Purpose, and Power. And she also hosted her own international radio show, The Code Connection, for 5 years and created the Genesis Clearing Statement. We have got so much to talk about here. I really do invite you to please go back and listen to her other shows. Last year was about 2021, you can go back and have a good reflection on it, but it's not just about what's being predicted. It's very much about our human consciousness and how we can shift it. And it really, if we want to see the change, we've got to work with Mother Earth and Father Universe. We've got to work with that consciousness out there to bring about the peace we seek, because the peace lies within us. So when we become it, we create it. Welcome back to the show, An.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah. It's great to be here always on your shows, and great to, just be able to come out and share with people and to just help bring some of this wisdom forward into the world. It's been quite a year, as you know. I've been out traveling around the United States, and I'm not in a position where I can travel internationally yet, but traveling around the US, and that was so great to be able to get out and interact with people face to face and to share the work and to let them see what's going on and what's happening. And I want to, if you don't mind, just right up front here, this is what the 2022 book looks like. And people can see it's a nice thick book. Don't worry, it's only like about 700-800 pages. So.
And you don't have to read it all at once. You can read it bit by bit if you want. Don't be intimidated by the size. It's the wisdom that lies within.
It's the wisdom that lies within it. And you're right. It looks a little intimidating when you first look at it, but it's actually broken down in a very easy to use format, as you well know. You can go through, you're only doing a page or so a day. Maybe at the beginning of the month, you might be doing a couple of more pages than that. But, it's really interesting when I was out, because what I found is people are hungry, they're thirsty for ways to maneuver in this world and ways to be able to deal with things that are happening. It's not so much that people are unable to deal with things as much as they're seeking the tools, they're seeking the resources, they're seeking the wisdom that will help them move through things and to make the shifts and to make the changes. And I think that has been really inspiring to see, where people are very receptive to this. They're very excited to have that tool that doesn't tell them you have to do A, B, C, and D, but more opens up their own thinking, their own soul processes, their own connection to their soul self and the divine energy in the world. And that, I think, is such a beautiful piece. And that really leads in so well to where we're headed in 2022, because I've titled 2022 the year of embracing a heart of love. And so this is going to, in some ways, be a relief for some people. Of course, people are at all different phases of what's happening in the world and what's going on in their own life and what they've been dealing with. And the great thing with this work, the Code Journey, is that it gives people an opportunity to connect some of the pieces and to understand what's behind some of the pieces. It's not just like, hey, there's a bunch of chaos going on in the
exactly.
world.
Yes.
It's kind of like, here's what's behind the chaos. And the exciting piece that you already mentioned in regard to that is that when we understand what is underlying it, now we have the power to change it.
Yes.
Now we have the power to choose differently. We have the power to take action from that wisdom. And I think that this is what's going to be a good opening going into 2022, because I know a lot of people are feeling worn out.
Oh, yeah.
But they're feeling like, when does all of this craziness end?
Yeah, because I remember last year you saying that, we're in a kind of a 4-year transition, 4 or 5-year transition. But, each year is going to bring something different to us in that growth, in that transition, which humans have to transition into, because it's our very survival that is at risk here. But, you mentioned wisdom, but I want to draw the difference between knowledge and wisdom. And as far as I'm concerned, wisdom is the wisdom to know how to use the knowledge. And I think a lot of people have been receiving a great deal of knowledge and don't know what to do with it. And it's only when you're calm, quiet, and centered and go in that the wisdom comes forth and allows you to know what to do with that knowledge.
Well put with that, really. And I think that's also a good piece of where we're at in many ways right now, as we're headed into 2022, is a lot of people are like, okay, I'm learning about this, or I'm getting all of this information in. I think for some people, it's pretty much been an information overload.
Yes.
And of course, 2021 has been about all this shifting and adjusting and changing and unpredictableness and being in this state of flux and things like that, which I think is where some of the people are feeling, or a lot of people might be feeling, that kind of burned out sort of energy. So what we're going to see happening as we move into 2022 is 2022 brings in a component of balance. So choice and balancing things is going to become very, very important. Now, I'm very optimistic about this, because there really is a lot of beautiful humanitarian energy that's going to be present for us. I want to just kind of put that out there for people to realize that this is a year where we can get little bits of hope coming in, that are not just hope as in that hopeism, like let's all stay positive, but the pieces that are verifying where we're moving in the right direction and where we're not moving in the right direction. Now, it's also important that we realize in the process of balancing, that's not always an easy process, because yes, we're in this 4 to 5 year period of major shift. It's a major piece that determines what direction our world goes. So it's a very critical turning point that we're in, and we have very, very active energy that's going on here that is very strong energy present in our world. So it's kind of like the earth. As the earth starts to balance from different things, let's say the earth has been abused in certain areas, or overloaded or weighted down in certain ways, we can expect to see storms and turbulence and things like that come up as she's balancing. It doesn't necessarily mean that, climate change is all over the place or things like this. We don't have to go down all of those paths. Some of this is really just about balancing, her balancing, and that's the way nature works. It goes like this. It goes up and down in waves, and some years it's going to be very hot and some years it's going to be very cold. That's just nature.
But that's climate change, though, isn't it? Is like the climate's going to change according to it rebalancing itself. And, if we can work with nature and help it with the balancing, and the same applies to us. When we are out of balance, we cause a static that can interfere with the balance with Mother Nature, right? Yes. So our balance is quite essential to the Earth's balance as well. And if we've got this turmoil going on within us, then, there's going to be that reflection in the earth and vice versa. So, I mean, everybody needs to kind of calm down, rebalance.
We definitely want to move towards more of that balanced state for ourselves, because we've got a lot of storm energy that's going to come in this year. So we want to pay attention to where that is coming in, where that's coming forward and things. And through that, it's going to tell us, because the more turbulent we are, the more chaotic we feel inside, the more that we're going to see things kick up in our oceans and volcanic activity in, some of these areas, island areas, things like that, because it's all water, it's all connected.
Yes.
And so when we have this turbulence going on within us, we're mostly water in a lot of ways. Our bodies are, so that creates a connection with any kind of water or fluid source.
Well, so case in point, here in British Columbia, we have had, they call it atmospheric storms. We had 3 in a row, and we still have cities and agricultural lands underwater, and landslides, and the amount of destruction that has gone on here, and like never seen before. So, and we're 70% water. So so it's like, get out the mop.
Yes, it's
calmer waters we want, right? Calmer waters is what we're wanting.
Yeah, we want to be in the ebb and the flow without getting to the turbulent spots, but at the same time, we can't totally avoid some of that turbulence that's going to come in. And this is where it will be challenging for people. But I think a lot of the turbulence that does come up is not so much about destroying us, but it's about the transition. It's about the death and the rebirth energy. And it's going to be very connected to, what do I want to say? to the aspects of where there's corruption, where what is dissolving right now to make way for what is coming in, is going to put up a fight.
Resistance.
And so we have huge achievements, huge successes that are going to be coming through, a lot of very good stuff that's going to be happening. But like any criminal or things like that, they're not going to just lay down and go, okay, well, take me away. I did a bad thing. I'm confessing all my sins. We might see 1 or 2 of those, but
kicking and screaming is generally
the battle or a fight. So we still have this strong battle energy, which is why we're seeing a lot of extremes throughout the earth and in different places.
Well, chaos brings clarity, right? Haglas, the Celtic rune, it's disruption. And if, in order to bring about that peaceful clarity, we really need to have that disruption, because it's a cleansing, isn't it? It's bringing up to the surface what we don't need so we can skim it off, right? So, we're always going to have that disruption. A lot of people go, in their own lives, God, my life has been so turbulent lately. Everything has gone wrong. When it's kind of a clearing, and it's bringing you back to the core of what really matters. Bringing you back to the core of who you really are, that compassion and sense of community. Because I know, one of the things you talk about for happening for 22 is unity, coming together. Yeah. And I think, when we have chaos and disruption, we're more inclined to step up for each other. Right. So, I mean, it's something I wish people would do all the time, not wait for the chaos, but during chaos, that is really when we see us coming together.
Well, and I think that's it. So even where we experience hard situations that are likely to happen through these battles of power, it's also going to bring people together. And it's also going to make them start realizing, look, we have to set aside everything that's dividing us and come into this compassion for the polarities. The polarities are always going to exist. It's not about alleviating the polarities. What it's about is, because each one of them has blessings and beauty and positive things to provide for us. And so it's not about, getting rid of that polarity. It's about learning how to work with that polarity and coming together and using the wisdom of each other. And I think that people are going to come down to it being, this is now about humanity. This is now about the children who are going to carry on being here on the earth as some people leave. And I think that we saw a lot of the turbulence last year in things, a lot of the big chaos last year. So we're going to see more of the results of things starting again to come into this balance, into this state of compassion. More people are going to be seeking to align with truth and compassion in things, which is great for me, because that's what the co-journey work is so heavily about, is that process of doing that. But people are going to need to come together more and say, look, why are you holding this different opinion? And understand it, understand where other people are coming from. Because I think if we can stop being pulled into battles with each other and stop playing into this division that has been running through our world, and sit down and really get down to just some hardcore pieces and really get down to communicating with each other, then there's a lot to be learned. And that's a big piece of 2022 is learning, is opening up these communication pieces and saying, okay, if we get down to the core fundamentals, it's not about race or all of these other things that are being used to divide us. It's about, we want a world to live in where we can make choices, where we can do what's best for us, where we can have a safe world for our kids, and we don't have to worry about, who's coming and going around them or things like this. I mean, there's so many fundamentals that we are united on, and that's a core piece for us to work on right now. Where is our common ground, and what can we learn from that opposition? And that's where we will start to break down this division, and we'll start to work together. Because again, it's not about dissolving what is different or opposite from us. It's about learning from it, and it's about learning how do we take what is valuable on each side and work from there.
Right.
And realize those core values that really are our common ground.
Right. There was a wonderful statement or a posting the other day that I really was beautifully done. And it's not just about communication. It's about compassionate communication. If we step into compassion when we communicate with each other, we're stepping into a willingness to be open and willing to learn, to understand, instead of judging. Because our communication is, I'm right, you're wrong. Instead of like, how do you really feel? How did you come to this place of thinking? And as you said, fundamentally, when we start the conversation from that compassionate standpoint, we realize we all want the same thing. We just might be going about it in a different way. And we also realize, well, you want that and I want that. Why don't we come together? Because coming together, we can make it happen so much faster and so much stronger than just doing it on our own. So I think compassionate communication is something that we really need to see, isn't it?
I think that's very critical as we move forward and as we go through 2022, because we do need to open these doors with each other, again, respecting the differences, but finding ways to come together. It's kind of like you don't want everybody to have the same skill.
Right.
You want people to have all these different skills,
yes.
So that when you bring all those different skills, you can actually create something. If
Ja,
everybody
bestimmt.
has just the one skill,
Yeah.
it's going to be hard to create things.
Right.
You need, if you're going to build a house, you need somebody who's good at plumbing, somebody who's good at electrical work. You need somebody who's good about structure and frames and things like that. You need people with all different
Expertise.
aspects of wisdom and understanding and skills. And when we talk about compassion, Sarah, I think this is one of the things that people sometimes struggle with, because in 2022, we're going to have to do a lot of choosing. Are we going to uphold and stand strong in divine alignment or not? I mean, we literally have this kind of good evil thing, but again, we need to remove some of those barriers or titles or labels that we're putting on things and get down to saying, well, what do we actually mean when we're talking about this? And get down the core principles. And so many people, they think if you're compassionate, you're too soft.
Yes,
You're
too sensitive.
You're too wishy-washy. You're
Yeah.
going to get run over. You're going to get, nothing can get done from that space, which is not true. Actually, everything comes out of compassion. And I think the toughest part is for people to see what truly is compassionate and what is not compassionate, because we've been led to believe many things are and they are not. And when you get into compassion combined with wisdom and strength, this is our forte and this is our focus in 2022. Compassion is not about being walked on. It's not about letting other people have whatever they want, but compassion is caring. And you can be compassionate and you can care even if you don't agree. Even if you don't necessarily like the choices somebody is making or the path that they're taking or the things that they're doing. And this is a big thing. A lot of people say, how can you have compassion for all of these people who are so-called evil in our world? And it's because they're not necessarily born into that. That's a distortion that can become created into this third dimensional earth world. And it is about a component where if we really look at the influences that they were raised under, yes, they always had a choice, and yes, they always do have a choice. But until you've been through some of those structures, you don't realize the amount of fear, the amount of coercion, the amount of these different things that are there from birth.
Right.
And what is held over them and kept over them. So when we can come into these spaces where we can be compassionate for what somebody has been through or what has put them into the position of making the choices they're making, and yet still stand strong for truth and integrity and upholding divine presence, now we're moving forward into something. And I think that this is really the new direction, because many people are seeing this, especially when we look at the way our world is set up, our governments are set up. It's set up with all of this division. And a lot of people are saying, you know what, I really don't want to sit on one side or the other fence anymore. I just want truth. I want transparency. I want integrity. I want, a world where we can all live and exist and bring our talents and our skills and things out in the world. And, so again, we need to come down to these common factors and look at the hardcore pieces. And this is still hard for people.
Right. I mean, everybody has programming, not just from this lifetime of being brought up. You know, there's the DNA programming of your parents, the past life programming. And, you know, at some point you've got to realize, do I really resonate with the way I'm reacting? Or is this an old program, an old pattern that's running? And do I want to continue this pattern? You know, if we want to see peace, kindness, caring, love in this world, if we want to see an equilibrium, if we want to ignite our hearts and souls, we've got to realize we are the equation. And if we're at that dis-ease in our lives, where we just feel, you know, that it's not working for me, why am I angry all the time? Why do I see things this way? It's like, it's an invitation. It's that tap on the shoulder going, do you really enjoy your life the way you're living it? You know, and it's, if your answer is no, not trying to justify the anger, but, you know, be honest, good chat in the mirror, because it's very hard to fool yourself when you're staring at yourself. And you say, do you really want to feel like this? And if the answer is no, the next question is, what are you going to do about it? Because there's millions of resources out there that can help you go in, clear out, and find that path that you really do want to walk. But I think, you know, when you talk about somebody who's committed a crime, we can understand what made them commit the crime. There still has to be some responsibility for committing the crime. So we're not condoning the crime, but we're trying to understand why the crime was there in the first place. And instead of just throwing people away, which we have become such a disposable society as a human race, instead of throwing people away and going, they're a dead loss, why aren't we working with them? Why aren't we helping them see themselves from the inside out and showing them there is another way out? And that in itself is compassion. So, you know, the compassion in our communication, in our understanding, our interactions, in our being able to look at it from somebody else's point of view of why they're doing what they're doing, why they're saying what they're saying, helps us navigate on how we can help them to see things differently. Because if we're going to come at it with judgment, we're going to meet judgment. What happens? Fireworks, conflict. So let's put the judgment away, right? The comparison away, the competitiveness away, and let's look at that compassion in everything that we do. So I think the big word for 22 is compassion, folks.
It's definitely coming into that heart unconditional love space. And, you know, you've touched on some things that are definitely applicable in 2022 as well. And that is, you know, we want to learn what's going on with somebody, and yet they still need to be accountable for their actions. And accountability becomes a very big thing in 2022. So a lot of these people that have been saying, when are we going to see the bad guys taken away? Well, that could happen in 2022, because that's the year that it's all conducive to that. However,
people aren't getting away with things so much, right?
Yeah,
the spotlight is on them, the accountability is there. Yeah.
And when we see some of that happen, come up, and people are being, you know, needing to take that accountability, and how do we change some of this stuff? Well, we change it by being personally accountable in our own lives.
Yes.
And that's how we change it in the collective. And also, the more that we are standing in this alignment, the easier it gets to see where things are out of alignment or working against that divine alignment in things. And so this is also going to stem many layers, because some people have said, I've known all this was going on, it's about time we see some stuff. And then you're going to have other people that are like, oh, what? Wow. This has been going on under my face all of this time. And
I was wearing blinkers and
have
headphones.
All of these layers, because people are in all of these different spaces of what they're aware of in relation to different things. But we also have a big piece that's coming in that's connected with 2022 that is about learning from our past in particular. So that's why I was saying this is great that you're bringing this up, because if we don't learn from our past, if we don't understand the cycles, if we don't understand what is creating the issues of things, then we can't change our course of direction.
Right. Right.
And so it is through that understanding, it's through looking to our past, and we're going to see things from our past, good and challenging, come up in 2022. And we're going to have to decide, are we going to keep repeating this cycle? And, there's certain aspects of world events that go on, and they show up every 100 years approximately
Mm-hmm.
in our world, when I was looking at the codes on some of those not too long ago. And so we have to look at it and say, are we going to continue this cycle? So a lot of
Right.
this bigger upheaval that we're experiencing during this 5-year period that we're in is about breaking these bigger patterns. It's about it's
Mm.
like the abused person stepping out of the abusive
Yes.
situation. It is, this walking away and changing gears. And yes, there can be some trauma involved in that. And yes, it's not always an easy thing to do, to have to stand strong.
Yeah, and
But
don't self-persecute, right? I think that's the first mode that people get into. Oh my God, oh, I'm an awful person. No, you may have done some things that weren't so good, but you were doing it under that programming. Now you
yes,
know better. You can make better decisions. Concentrate on the now and moving forward. Don't persecute yourself for things that were done in the past.
exactly, exactly. And they're not coming up for us to go into this
Right.
guilt and this hate and all of these other things, or anger towards people because of whatever comes up. It's coming up because it's time for us to heal this. It's time for us to choose a different direction. It's time for us to come together and say, you know what? I'm done with this side. I'm done with this side.
Mm.
I'm getting rid of all your labels, and we're just going to look at what your actions actually are. Or I'm going to, just get down to these pieces and say, look, we've been going through this pattern over and over again, and obviously it's not getting us anywhere. We're not changing. We just keep going through this pattern. So we need to break this pattern in a more permanent way. It's kind of
Mm.
like that person that's holding an addiction in their
Yeah.
life, and addictions are another big thing that we need to release in this year, whatever those are. And you have those people where it's like they don't fully break the addiction, so every now and then they go through a phase of being back in that addiction
You're right.
again,
Yes.
and until at some point they say enough is enough, and then they don't go back, and they say, okay, look, I've tried A, B, and C, and I just keep going back in that addiction. Maybe it's time I try something different. Maybe it's
Right.
time I learn from this. What is it teaching me? What is it trying to
Mm.
tell me? What is this experience? What is happening that leads me back in there? Because something is creating a trigger every single time that puts me back into that addictive behavior.
Yeah, I'd like to address that because, my observation of, of late has been a lot of people that have gone through the transition have become this, a person with meaningful purpose and new directions and really loving who they are. They're so afraid to go back to where they were. They're no longer flexible. And I feel they don't know how to bend for the fear of breaking. Right. And I think, we need to be flexible, and it's okay to bend. It's okay, you're not going to break if you bend. And I think that's a fear of a lot of people that have gone through these things, is that I've got to make sure I stay on the right track. Otherwise, I'm going to go back. And in that self and that rigidity, you can only break. So it's, I think, lightening up with ourselves, remembering to take that breath, allowing the energy and the fluidity to come into our thoughts, because like a tree in the wind, look, it can take a hell of a lot of wind before it's going to break, right? So we're pretty strong and we're pretty flexible if we think more in the fluidity and the bendability rather than the breaking.
Well, absolutely. And I think that this also plays into a component where I can see where a lot of people may try to simplify in this upcoming year, or they may be feeling aspects of deprivation that could come up from various points where they feel more restricted, or they have a greater striving for experiences and wanting to live a little more freely and not be weighed down by things. And we want to get out of
Yeah.
that deprivation mindset,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not about depriving yourself of everything. It's about not letting material things run you or
Right.
govern you or command your life. And this is the real difference. It's like, it's not that, somebody who's trying to step away from alcohol could never have a drink again.
Hmm.
But the difference is will that drink control them or not?
Right. Yes.
Are they turning their power over to them? The same could be said about food or shopping or anything
Yeah.
that is this material experience. And in this year, it's going to be very important for us to realize that we may need to give up some immediate pleasures in order to create a lasting joy or a
Mm.
lasting um, space that is more uh, in flow and more enjoyable for us. So it's kind of like you got to do maybe a little bit of work and say,
Yeah.
okay, I don't need that candy bar right now that I'm just getting on impulse because I happen to be stressing at the moment. What I need to do is to sit back and realize that that's going to be a short-lived energy
Yeah.
for me. And then come back and say, you know what, if I can just hang in there, get through this next 2 hours, I can sit down and have this amazing feast.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that food's always going to be there and it's going to sustain me for a
Mm.
longer period of time in a way that I'm going to feel better.
Right.
So
Right.
these
Balance again, right?
choices are so important right
Yeah.
now, and I don't think that we can underestimate that or underestimate the wonderful and incredible opportunities that are being presented among what feels very disruptive to us.
Mhm.
The disruption is coming up specifically so we can change
Yeah.
things. It's coming up specifically so we can take different directions, so we can learn how these things have been implemented in our lives, our societies, our cultures, and come around and say, you know, do we really care about this component or that component? No, we care
Yes.
about we care about what's happening. We care
Right.
about these core pieces. So
Yeah. I
I
mean,
think that this is so powerful for us to look at, and it's just such a reminder that you know we are so powerful, and we
yeah.
underestimate the power of the impact that we have by taking care of ourselves in our own individual lives.
Right. I'm going to give an example here with British Columbia here again. You know, with all the landslides we've had, our main artery road literally disintegrated. Our railway lines, and it virtually cut us off from the rest of the country, you know, supply chain and everything else, never mind the lives that have been lost and the farms that have been lost. And basically it was like, why was this so vulnerable? Too much forestation. And so, okay, we've got to stop cutting down so many trees in vulnerable areas. Rebuilding, no, we're not going to ticky-tack. We've got to reinforce and make sure we build it better for a longer period of time. We've got to be more protective over our farmland. So out of all of that destruction, and when it comes to rebuilding, you know you're not going to rebuild it exactly the same. You're going to
Right.
build it better because now you have that foresight. You have that, okay, this is why it happened. Or this is what needs to happen in order for it to be stronger, to sustain any of the storms that we're going to have in life, right? Physically, emotionally, spiritually, we're always going to get storms, but the stronger we are in our own structure and the structure of our land and everything else, is we can weather those storms. So it's okay if something disintegrates or dismantles. It's just a beautiful opportunity to rebuild it from that consciousness of not just gluing it back together, but restructuring it that it can weather those storms in the future.
And I think this is going to be a big call for people to develop self-sufficiency.
Mm,
Um, we have become so reliant on other people. So often
yes,
people turn and say, I want our government to do this for us, or I want
yes,
these people to do it for us, or, you know, and they're not willing to take hold and do the work themselves.
right.
And, you know, this is what communities that thrived in, I don't even want to say generations, but, you know,
Eons,
thousands
the
of years
village,
ago.
right?
I
Only
mean,
as
your
strong as each
farming
other. Yeah,
communities were
yeah,
your
yes,
biggest piece of survival,
right.
and you learned to not just go by what you were told,
Yeah.
but you learned how to actually read the earth. You learned how to
Hmm.
look at the soil and know what the soil needed. You
Yes.
learned how to look into the sky and go, I can tell this is coming, or the plants are doing
Yeah.
this, so I know that winter is truly onsetting, or these things. And this is something that we've lost, but
Yeah.
the self-sufficiency is something that we need to come back into mentally, emotionally, physically, and we need to really start disconnecting from some of the input
Mm.
that's out there and just taking what's being thrown at us at face value instead of relying on the forecaster who,
Yeah.
how many times is that forecaster really right anyways,
Yeah.
right, with the weather?
Mm-hmm.
And in these times that we're in, again, the codes show that the weather is going to be very turbulent throughout the year. We're going to have a lot of time. So people need to not be taking chances with this.
Yeah.
And they're going to need to learn to read nature. They're
Yes.
going to need to learn to say, okay, how can we get back to it? And really, this is where the past comes back up again,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we need to look to, well, how did people do these things when they didn't have technology?
Right. Right.
How did they do it when they didn't have this equipment? Because they thrived well, their lands were still plowed,
Yes.
the work
Thousands of
was still
years we've
done.
been here.
I mean, so we can certainly do it. And these are the things that we want to keep in mind when the solar flares come in and different communications get shut off or messed
Mm.
up or interrupted. We're going to have to go inside here ourselves. We're going to have to understand, well, what can I do? Do
Yeah.
I have some seeds that I can grow? Do I have, this or that? Um, I was actually very happy to see, because we've had some very bumpy rides here in Maine with, our people in power here.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very happy to see that the people voted to make it a constitutional right to be able to grow their own food for
Right.
survival and consumption.
And it had to be I mean, that should be a no-brainer.
That should be a no-brainer, right?
Yeah.
But we actually had to do that because there were actually initiatives starting to come through that wanted to remove that right from people. So,
Making them
here
more
again, people,
dependent, more dumb, more controllable,
yeah. So,
abstaining from
so we
choices.
do, we want to break this and say, let me not look at the weather forecast. Let me
Yeah.
go out and look at the skies,
And
look
feel
at the
it.
soil, look at the plants,
Yes.
and see what's happening, because that's going to tell me everything I need to know. So I really hope too, as some of these things come up and these upheavals or these different pieces play out in the world, as we're trying to find our way
Mm-hmm.
back into balance, back into communicating with one another, back into working with one another and valuing our differences and our different expertises, that we will, you know, come into this space of getting back to teaching our children
Mm-hmm.
about nature. And this is going to be important too, because a lot of our star seeds and our generational influences that are coming in during 2022, they're not going to have a huge attention span. We're going to have a lot of dyslexia starting to show up in things.
ADD and
So
all that.
this also creates a lot of confusion, because things get twisted, as we know,
Mm.
with different forms of dyslexia. They see things opposite of what they are. Um, they need something that's more experientially based. They
Right.
need something that's more physically active based.
Interactive. Yeah.
And they're much more intuitive and much more sensitive.
Yes.
So their learning needs to come from the tactile experiences, the
Mm-hmm.
visual experiences, immersing in the experiences. And so I really hope that we can get out of some of this, other stuff that
Mm.
we've seen pop up in the schools, and come back into a more experiential based of really learning the land, really
Yes.
learning about animals and having these connections with them to get these real experiences. Kids need this. Kids, that's how they learn. That's how
Yeah.
they expand their mind. That's how they become their own person.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Very much so. And, we're seeing a lot of what we call indigo kids out there that are just so much more hypersensitive to what's going on out there. And, I think one of the big, we're the dividers with the children is that we have so much electronic that we're putting in front of our kids, and they go off to the supermarket and think the meat grows in the aisle and the vegetables grow in the aisle, and I think actually having them put their hands in the mud and grow something and then eat what they've grown in gratitude and appreciation is going to change everything. Actually going to, a farm and seeing those animals, because, we have an awful lot of plant-based food now where we really don't need to eat all these animals, especially, the manufacturing of animals. I think that is something that needs to stop. There's a lot of things that we've done just to make it easy to consume because it's more profitable. And I think this is a good wake-up call for us to go, do I need to have a steak every day? Do I need this? Do I need the latest iPhone? Do I need all of that? And people are always talking about robots taking over the world. Well, folks, they have. It's called a phone. And and that is the addiction, right? And that also dumps people down. It also stirs people up. And yes, it can be a wonderful informational tool and connective tool. But when you've got people that are always pushing their own agenda on it, we kind of come dumbed down. So I think at some point we have to look at, hey, hang on. This is too much on there. Use it for what it's meant to be. Contacting people, communicating, maybe taking pictures. Yes, that's absolutely great. Take pictures of the kids making mud castles, or going on that wonderful hike, or playing in the ocean, or, playing with the chickens or the other animals at the animal farm. Those are the kind of things I think that we need to shift our mindset to, because we've become too dependent on everything being made easy for us. We've become detached from its very source. And so we don't have the gratitude. We think we're entitled to more. We go and buy and demand more, but we're left feeling more unhappy. And I think our children right now, some of them are wonderful examples of that reconnection to land, to spirit, because that beautiful sensitivity that they have and able to see things, that we need to turn our eyes to those children and listen and learn.
Well, absolutely. And I think, again, this is all part of the balancing, because the structures are going to be coming down and already are coming down in our world. These hypersensitive kids, the starseeds and the generations that are coming in and having an impact right now, are not good with heavy structures. And so the more that different regulations and rules and mandates and restrictions and all of this stuff is put on them, the more they're going to rebel.
Right.
And they're going to stand up and they're going to fight about it. And, again, we're in these transitions and we're not going to get out of these death and rebirth cycles, but we need to remember that as we're standing strong for principles, for divine alignment, for compassion, for love in the world, that we do have these hypersensitives in our world. And we do, it's not just about them becoming unhinged or being part of a particular group or political whatever, we truly have these hypersensitive people, and we do need to understand and be aware of what they're doing to them. And there's another piece of that balance coming in, of needing to balance doing what needs to be done and holding the strength, but also having that compassion and that comparing piece in there. And we need to pull the kids off of AI. We need to get them off of these dependencies. We need to help them see the entire process, where it goes from the seed and then becomes the plant and then becomes food and then becomes this, and then, that whole cycle and process in there, because this is where we develop respect and appreciation for things. This is, you think back in generations past, those that were born in the early 1900s or the 1800s, and most people have their own gardens, and they call them victory gardens a lot of times, because the victory gardens were really what you built when you had nothing, and they helped generate abundance and victory and kept you going in hard times. And so when you consider some of these pieces, they rejoiced when they got a piece of fruit. Not when they got a cake or a Starbucks or whatever else coming out of the store and the bricks and mortars and stuff like that. But they really saw the process
Mm-hmm.
in there. And so this is another piece that's very important in 2022 with our codes that are available, is working with the flow of nature.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so we want to start thinking about, well, what grows naturally in fall? What
Yes.
holds forward in food for winter? What is naturally growing in spring, and so on and so forth. So if we can get our kids out to some of the farmers markets to
Yes.
learn that, I see more and more of these initiatives between the farms, at least where I'm at, and the school systems, to do these kind of educational pieces, to have them active in the community gardens and things like this, where they can see these processes go through. But when you look at the people that were born back in those times, I mean, they were excited for a piece of fruit because everything that went into that, because that was the season. And we
Yes.
need to get back to that. We need to get back to bracing it, because that's what helps to keep our bodies in a strong
Sync.
balance and
Mm-hmm.
homeostasis.
Mm-hmm.
Um, God didn't create the seasons and the directions and all
Right.
of these pieces to be in battle with each other. He created them to be in balance with each other.
Yeah. You know,
And so,
I'm
you
of the
know,
generation where, the local farmers open market twice a week, and you go, pick up your spuds and everything else. And then I grew up in beautiful land where we had gardeners. And so a lot was grown for us, and a hothouse for the tomatoes and everything else. And there was a lot of canning going on. So when there was
yes,
an abundance of it, you canned it. We didn't kind of necessarily have freezers back then, but we canned things or dried the goods out so we could have them later on in the year. And there's nothing like a wonderful fresh loaf of bread coming out of the oven. We used to sit there kind of just ready with the butter on our knives, and you could hear it as it cut through the crusty loaf and this hot bread, and the things coming out of the oven that that were made for local farms provided, or you grew yourself. We also ate less, and we ate better,
yeah,
because there's so much processed food out there today that we're always hungry, and we've got such obesity, not of body but of mind out there. I'm still hungry, I still need more. It's because the food isn't nutritional enough to sustain us, and so we're always hungry, and a hungry body is going to be a hungry mind and a hungry spirit. So if we actually kind of go back to growing our own food, or buying from the local organic farmers and supporting that, we're going to realize that less is more, because it is more fruitful for us and more sustainable for us. And everything about our senses is going to be a lot stronger. I just want to hit on the senses sensitivity. I'm a hypersensitive, and it's this last couple of years has worn on me. And as a hypersensitive, you kind of retreat in, because everything that's going on out there feels like it's bombarding you. And I understand what you're saying about the children. And I'm also dyslexic, by the way. So the children out there that are hypersensitive, do not, this is why I say our autistic children are here to teach us. They are so creative. They have such wonderful minds that if we step into their minds and see it from their point of view, we're going to get the education, instead of demanding that they come into our world, which quite honestly is dysfunctional. So I think when we are around hypersensitives, don't demand that they toughen up or they do this or stop being so sensitive. Step into the world and see it through their eyes, and you will actually see things that you have never ever thought of before. And it is quite an experience, but it's hard being a sensitive. So have a little compassion for them.
I think this is so true. And, you talk about these different things. We get so out of alignment in many ways. And that's much of what's created us to reach the point that we are at in our world. And if we can just get back to what is the natural flow, and stop saying, I want this right now, I want that right now, I don't care, and living through this heavy materialism. And matter of fact, this will bring up another interesting piece for some people out there. But it, if we get back to saying, here's what the season's providing, let's get back into this flow, because what is growing in our earth from season to season is exactly what our body needs at that
Yes.
time.
Yes.
So when we're not eating in that natural flow, for example, then our body is always going to want something else. It's always going to put us in that sense of deprivation and components like that. And likewise, we need to help those who are hypersensitive to understand the importance of the structures and where that can be valuable.
Yes.
So using them to create some parameters or some guidelines or focus in a sense, as opposed to being a command or control over them. And this is the differences. And we need both, because there are times we need to work from a structured space, and there's times that we need to work from a creative space, but the creative space is also very divinely aligned.
Yes.
So, you know, that is part of our natural God nature of what we need to reconnect with a lot in 2022. Now, there's actually an energy that's coming up in 2022 in the codes that is what would be referred to in some of the biblical terms as the second coming of Christ. And so this is a very interesting piece, but what we want to keep in mind with this is the second coming of Christ is maybe not the way the biblical has it exactly defined. And I want to open people's minds up about that a little bit, because it's not so much that, hey, a human being is going to appear on earth and we're going to go through this whole thing the same way it happened
for us and everything else again.
The times of Christ. It is really more about, again, restructuring our thinking a little bit and refocusing our priorities. And when we really look at what the energy of Christ or Jesus was about, it was really about holding us away from materialism. And not getting consumed by the material world. And so that component becomes very strong and open in 2022, where it's saying, don't let the material world consume you. So the second coming of Christ energy that is coming up at that time, and we're also going to have a very strong presence from Archangel Michael during that time, which is, of course, heavily rooted in compassion, is to come back and say, we need to let go of some of these material things in order to open up this compassion. We need to stop putting our happiness and our joy in things and bringing it back to experiences, interactions, community, communications, these sorts of pieces. So true humanitarian efforts, and this is going to be an interesting piece because we're probably going to see a lot of exposure on these so-called philanthropic organizations and charities out there that are actually running in all these corrupt networks, and we're going to see the networks connected to those exposed in 2022, which is going to be great on one hand, and yet, you know, that can shake people up. So we have this opportunity for true humanitarian things to thrive. And this comes, and it comes back into some of the pieces where I'm always encouraging people, look to your small business owners, look to your local farmers if you have local farmers in your area. Look to these people because they are the core of what's going to keep your community going. They are a lot of times the heart of the community. And so we need to look very carefully at who do we have representing us, who is making choices for us as a community or representing us. Are they really representing us? Or are
as
they
a community or their own agenda?
Yes. And so we want to come back, and again, I encourage people, support these small businesses, support these individual proprietors. This is part of redirecting our priorities back into opening divine presence again. And the more we can release these addictions to the material things, the more we're going to break these cycles that have kept us locked in and out of this corruption, of this different forms of totalitarianism or tyranny or things like that going on. We have the opportunity to break these cycles in 2022.
Yay.
Yay.
We've been
And we're
chasing
going
the
to see hope. And in
yeah.
2022, we're going to start to see the shift in the command. So the more we come into that alignment personally, the more we're making these choices in our own life to say, I want to support a healthy lifestyle, or I want to support community focus and helping. And I don't want some organization or a government
Right.
telling us who is worthy of
Right.
food and who is not worthy of food. If they need food, we're going to give it to them, type of thing. And this, again, coming back together
Mm-hmm.
and working in partnership with each other, this is going to be so important. I mean, all these pieces just keep coming back together. And as we take these steps, even if you're taking it only for yourself in your own life, you will magnify, because people will see that and it will ripple through. We have the butterfly effect going on
Yes.
in 2022. So even your small little pieces of holding that door open for somebody,
Yes.
taking the time to see where they might be coming from, things like this, all of these pieces, the acts of kindness are going to become so powerful, and they're going to spark these hopes to show us that we are breaking these strongholds of control and reopening back into living freely as ourselves. And no, we're not going to go there overnight.
No.
No, we're not going to be there overnight. And we have to stop these battles of it's either the community or the individual. Yeah. Both are critical. Both are important in the humanity and existence. And we've got to stop making one thing more important than the other,
Yeah.
because neither is more important than the other.
No.
One life is not more important than another life. So as we start to come back around, and again, I think we're going to see that. And yes, there's going to be some huge challenges still. No, it's not going to turn around overnight.
But we're on track.
We're going to start seeing the pieces of hope. We're going to start seeing the pieces that affirm that we're, if we go in these directions, that we can really have a positive future. And our choices in 2022 are so powerful to the direction our future goes.
Yes.
And so this is critical. I mean, I can't stress it enough that, get down and look at it and let aside of whether this person's in this group or that group or whatever. What are they doing? What are you supporting? What are you making important in your own life?
Right. I've got 3 points I've got to get out here. One is the village again. The village. I say it on virtually every show. Everybody in the village is important, even the village idiot, because everybody is there to support one another. And a strong village can weather any storms, any battles, but it's the coming together. It isn't that the butcher is more important than the candle maker. It is everybody's contribution is what's going to make that village strong. So if we could go back to a village mentality and understand we need each other, and that coming together with each one of us, bringing our own forte, our own gifts, our own beautiful divine selves, we're going to create that beautiful, strong village. Going back to the rebirth of Jesus, not in a human being, because again, that is external with someone you're worshiping. It is within you, that divine energy of love that is within you. And the more you step into that, more you become God's essence. And you can't knowingly hurt someone else without it hurting you. So everything you're going to do is from a place of love, caring, and kindness, because that is the algorithm of life. What you seed, what you water, what you nurture is what's going to grow. So be very mindful and very heartful and very soulful of what seeds you want to plant, how you water them, how you're going to nurture that growth, whom is it going to serve, how is the community going to be better for it. And yes, we can think of our eye, because our eye is part of the grains of sand on the beach. And every single grain is important, like the cellular structure in our body. Every single cell is important to the optimization of our body. So the more that we are abundant and our cup runneth over, the more everybody is going to benefit. So we need to work on ourselves, come to that beautiful balance, that equilibrium, and open up to that love, meaningful purpose. What is our contribution? The looking at that less is more, And the more I can bring and give and share, the more abundant we all are. I think the more we're going to see that shift in the world. It's not one or two people, leaders doing it, and we're just sitting back. As we point a finger, there's three pointing back at us. What are we doing? How can we contribute? And it starts by going in, finding that equilibrium and balance within yourself. What doesn't serve you, let it go. What needs to open up, embrace. Take that beautiful journey of self-discovery, and you'll find out what your meaningful purpose is, how you can contribute, how you can make your own village abundant. And then we really start seeing that shift into that balance, because we're part of the imbalance. The more we become balanced, the more we balance out the whole equation. Sorry, had to get it off my chest.
Well, definitely. And I think we have to remember that the village needs to support the individual and what they need to
Yes.
do, and being who they are and being strong in themselves, and not just going with a collective mentality.
Yeah.
And if we don't support the individuals, there is no village.
Right.
And
Right.
so this is the piece that I think sometimes people miss. And then yet, the individual, it's important for them to share and contribute. It's also
Yes.
important for them to have time alone and retrospective, and to realize that some people are highly social people and some people are not highly social people. That doesn't, again, make them any more or less valuable. They just have different things to bring to the table and different needs. Just like people who are hypersensitive or dyslexic have different needs than people who don't operate that way, who operate in a very structured, rigid way. Or, I mean,
But
all
as I
these
said,
pieces.
you're
So it's
building a
like,
building. You want the person with the structure, but you've got to have the person with the vision for them to know how to build that structure. Right?
and,
Everybody has a
and
role.
and I think, this patience is another piece that we're going
Oh,
to see
huge.
come into
Yes.
2022. Forgiveness and patience. And these are going to be really important points as well, because as everything keeps coming out and the truth keeps surfacing through all these different things in our world and in our own lives, we need to be ready to forgive those people who innocently went down a direction that wasn't maybe such a great direction,
Right.
or they followed something because they didn't know the truth about it. So we need to be ready to forgive as things open up and people say, oh, I didn't realize this is what I was doing or what I was supporting or things like this. And so we need to be ready for that piece. And we also are going to, again, have to have some patience, because
Yes.
even though everything is still coming up and coming into the open, and it's more and more where we can see it, we have to have the patience for it to take and go through the process to correct itself,
Right.
to shift from being off track to being on track. And so that's, I think, one of the pieces that's hard for people, especially when they're worn down
Yes.
and they're tired from things in their life, and they feel like, gosh, I've had all these battles with family and friends, and everything's turned over last year, and people I thought were my friends weren't my friends, and people I didn't think were my friends suddenly were my friends.
Turbulence.
The shifts that we've seen in the last couple of years, and so it's very interesting, because on one hand, that's very hard to look at, and the truth can be very hard to look at sometimes and very disorientating at times. But when we embrace it, we realize how seeing it and getting it is putting us again back into this alignment and on track with things, and then allows us the opportunity to move towards a favorable future. Whereas if we didn't see those truths, we would be missing that opportunity in there. So I have to encourage people, among this compassion and among moving into this heart space and working to embrace that energy of love in 2022, is to have patience with the process, have patience with those people that maybe you've known something for 5 or 10 years, but they're just learning it.
Right.
And have patience while they're catching up, because so much is happening. They got a lot to catch up with.
Well, be their inspiration, right?
Be their inspiration.
Because that's the invitation.
if you're making wise choices, if you're
Yes.
living in this space of alignment and
Yeah.
kindness and compassion and different things like this, then you will be that inspiration for them. And we can bridge that gap. I think we can bridge some of these gaps and say, okay, look, this is important and this is important. There's valid points here. There's more than one thing we need to consider as we move forward. We don't have to make this an either or world.
Right.
We
Right.
need to find our blending. We need to find our mix in things.
You can have the salt and the pepper in the pot.
That's right. That's right. You can salt and pepper that food.
I know the book is thick and there's so much in there, and you literally dedicate your life just to channeling and writing down every year what we need to know. And, each year is a progress on each other. Each year is a shift in the direction. And, it's actually good for even people to go back and read the past year, because then you kind of understand, all right, yeah, I see that where that was happening, or maybe I'm a bit behind and I need to catch up so that I can go into this 2022 in the right vibration. Because I've kind of looked upon this last couple of years as a hurricane, and people so caught up in it they don't know how to get out of it. And sometimes you have to go to the eye, in order to find the peace in the center, in order to release yourself from it. The more we feed that hurricane, the more it just keeps consuming you. And so take a breath, and understand, really, quite it's corny, and the hippies have been saying it forever. Love is all. Love is all you need, right? And how do you get to that place of love? Well, it starts with the compassion, the caring, the kindness, the small acts, the smile. But it's very hard to project that out if you're not doing it for yourself. So be the love, be the kindness, be the compassion. Start with you, because then that will reflect out. So, okay, so let's summarize briefly what we've talked about in this show. I don't know how we're going to do that, but really, really, when it comes down to it, 3 C's: compassion, and caringness, collaboration, right? Kindness equals love, and that divine love of source energy, God, whatever you want to do, if we allow it to come through us, it will guide us forward in truth. And that it is about unity and understanding why the divide is there, not judging or damning the divide, but maybe becoming that inspiration for people to shift their perspectives. What else can you add to that?
I think the title, or the core title for 2022 of being embracing a heart of love.
Mm-hmm.
It sums it all up. If we embrace that heart of love, and even when you don't like with something, I mean, you can love it and not necessarily agree with it.
Exactly.
And not
like relatives.
necessarily, support it even. But
Yes.
it's, when you come from that space of love, that heart of love, you will naturally draw on the truth. You're naturally working from that open space. And you mentioned, Sarah, sometimes it's good to go back and look at what's gone on in previous years with things. And I want to mention, for those that want to do that, they can certainly go back into Smashwords and all of the previous years in different ebook, PDF formats. They can download for free.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
So the only one that's charged for is the current year. And, if somebody's in really, really tough, hard financial times and they're like, hey, I'd love your book, but I just can't afford it in any format whatsoever, they can follow me on social media, like Facebook, for example. And I put the post up on there, and they can, there's certain things, or they can get my newsletter, like then they can still get the monthly insights. Or on social media, I do the monthly insights and full moon and new moon insights in the book. So that gives them at least something that they can work with in there. And they can also, there's a variety of different things. They can go to their library. My books are available to libraries for free, and they can have the library do it, and then do a ebook checkout through the digital programs and libraries. A lot of libraries don't even know that. They don't even know that many authors on Smashwords have their works free to libraries. And
let your
so there's a
library
lot
know.
of different options there for people. I'm really hoping I can get back out and tour again in 2022. Of course, that's always depending on what's going on in the world, but people can also watch for that because I will be probably going out live to some different places. And I'm very open if somebody wants to gather a group of 5 or 10 people together, um, and have something done. And if I'm traveling through their area, we can coordinate it. Or if they have a favorite local bookstore that they want to support or metaphysical store that they want to support, they can ask that shop to have me in for a book signing. And so there's all kinds of options there to do it. But I encourage people to take advantage of those options and come in and, participate. So.
Yeah, and it's smashwords.com/books view. I'm going to have it here on the show posting, folks. All you have to do is put in her name and you will see everything there. Actually, I do have your because of the shows that we did before, I do have it as Jessie An Nichols George, even though you go by the name Anne now. But if you go put in her name on selfdiscoverymedia.com, all of her shows come up that we have done before. And there's quite a few of them. We've known each other for over 9 years now. And there's a lot of beautiful stuff that's there. The shows go back to, gosh, is it 20? Oh gosh, 20, I know, 8, 8, 16, and oh gosh, yeah, we go back a ways. So there's a lot of shows there. And even though, you're talking currently about what's going on right now in 2022, hindsight is also good to have, because when you go back and you feel, oh God, just another year of chaos, and you go back and go, oh, okay, I see where the transitioning was happening. I see where the shift was happening. I see the shift in myself, which I wasn't acknowledging. So kind of going back and listening and learning or reading helps you actually understand even more what you need to do now, and even more what makes sense out of the book now that you can apply, because you haven't written it just to be, oh, really, that's what's happening. Oh, okay, la, la, la. You've written it as an inspiration that is an invitation for
Well,
people
and
to accept.
and it is, and this really is that guidebook that's going to say people are irritated today, and here's what's underlying or
Yes.
creating that irritation or where it's coming from. And it really helps you to move through with that foresight in your day. Matter of fact, just today I had somebody contact me and they're like, I didn't read the codes yesterday and all this stuff kind of blew up and I,
Yeah.
didn't handle something very well. And they said, and then I read them at last night or this morning and it was just spot on.
Right.
And I think that's the thing that blows people away is they're like, how can you know this is going to happen? And it's not detailing it like, countries are going to shut everybody in their homes at,
Right.
this time at 6 a.m. in the morning, on this date. But it does show those restrictions are there. It does show these pieces. So again, we have it's like a daily reminder to know how to deal with these influences. And there's an invitation in there to explore different thoughts, different perspectives of different ways of looking at things, and to explore what certain things mean for you personally.
Right. Yes.
And that is so important because we need to look at it in all these different ways and places that it's playing out in things. And so, again, I'll show people the cover. This is the 2022. It's got a nice Pullman cover on there. And I like to do that because I do change the cover every year, but the books look very similar in the layout and the design. So, I want people to make sure they're getting the current year and the one that they want. Double check that before you click purchase.
Yes, exactly.
You put everything through to make sure you get the year that you want. Because it does happen sometimes, like, the links get directed to maybe the previous year or something. But I'm so excited, like I said, Sarah, because I did get out this past year and I'm seeing Learning Light University picked it up as recommended reading material, and more bookstores are starting to get it in. And I mean, that will be a focus of mine this year, is connecting more with the bookstores
Yeah, and
and
folks, recommend it to your local
shops.
bookstore. Just say,
Yeah.
I'd like you to get this book in, because very often, they don't know every book out there. And if you actually come in as a
Yes.
consumer and say, I'd like you to get this book in here, please, it has an impact, or I really want it to have an impact. The other thing is, which I think is an excellent idea, book club. Everybody
Yes.
have the book and then get together weekly, monthly, whatever the case is, and go through, like these were the codes for that particular time period. How did everybody go through it? And I think it can become then a great support group, a great community in itself of helping people through. And then, like, how do we prepare for what she says is coming next? So, or what do we need to do in order to make it happen? So, do a book club with the book. I think that's a great idea. And I think it should be, the family code, have it in the family. And you want to plan things for the next year, maybe read the book first. What do you
Yeah.
need to do in order to make sure that you're planning things at the right time, in the right way, for the right reason?
Definitely, it can really help you to know, because sometimes you're planning something, and then if you look at the book, that might not be a very safe time to be
Right.
traveling. So you may
Yes.
not really want to be traveling during that time. You may want to stay closer to home or different things like that. I do see that. I've had some people, they've started their own little kind of discussion groups
Mm,
and book clubs twice a month at the new moon and the full moon. I also run study sessions that are absolutely free to attend online, and they're recorded. So if people can't attend live, they can listen to the recordings on them. And that's a great place for people to come in and ask questions and get
mhm.
the support. And we have a very loving and safe environment in those groups. And the people are really wonderful there. And of course, we learn as people share the
Okay.
experiences they're having, and making the connections that they're having and learning with it. And so I think that that's so important. And so many people say, I really don't want to go through another year without this book, because
Yes.
even when things are hard and challenging me, I can get through it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that's one of the great pieces of the book is
Support group. It's a support for people to get through it.
yeah, it's a little bit of a support system in and of
Yeah.
itself. Some people say, man, I feel like I have my own private little teacher guide right with me. And they do, they say, but having the knowledge
Yes.
of knowing what's happening, what's going on, they said, I wouldn't have it any other way. Even when it's challenging and it's tough, at least I know I've got something to work with that can help me get through that.
Right.
I understand it better, and that means I can approach it better. I can handle the situation better. I can go into my day understanding, okay, everybody's going to fly off the handle, so I probably need to keep my cool today,
Right.
or things
Yeah.
like that. And so it is a powerful piece to work with. And I write
Mm.
it, and I write it a year in advance. Like, I'm getting ready to start 2023 here.
You're right.
And,
Exactly.
and it's always interesting for me, even myself. I go in every day and I read things, and I'm like, how did I get to this
Yes.
point?
Well,
I
that's
have
the
my
thing.
own days that it's like,
You're
it's just
channeling. That's
amazing
the
that
thing, right? So,
this is the
it's this.
verbiage I would use today, or,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
And, I think the other thing is that, never mind, what you're doing out in the community, or, things to avoid. But I think it also can be a great thing in your own self-discovery,
yeah,
on apply to self, participate with self. We want you to be a part of the community. We want you to be a part of the unity, but we don't want you to bring your angst or your anger or your dysfunction. So this is, I think, where the accountability is take a good look at your old patterning, and is it serving you? Is it allowing you to serve others? Because ultimately we're here to serve one another. And it's maybe 2022 is a year of you working on you to be that beautiful inspiration that begets that wonderful invitation to others. And if that's all you do in 2022 and the book helps you on that journey, great, because every time that you're taking that step forward, that energy of yours is rising, that frequency is illuminating, you are already making a difference with the people around you and in your own world, and also collectively energy in the world. The energy is definitely shifting, isn't it? It's definitely
it,
shifting.
it is. And I think we're going to notice more of that shift in 2022. And each of us have our own personal cycles as well within what's happening in the year. And it runs starting with our birthday and going to our birthday of the following year. And so in that personal year cycle, we each, some people are going to be finding successes and some people are going to be dealing with challenges. And like, I've just entered into a 3-year, really hard, challenging code pattern. And so, that's something that I'm working through, but at least I was able to see that coming and prepare somewhat for it. So I'm in a better position than when Jesse went through it, or, when that cycle hit previously. And so in that process, that is something that I can work with people on. If people really want to go into an even more in-depth space than just the book, I do those personal year reports. I will tell people right up front that they are very labor intensive for me. So there may be times of the year that I'm not really doing them, and we either need to get them done a little bit earlier or something like that in advance. But in the price that I charge for those, I do also include a follow-up session through Zoom. And that way they can ask questions and give feedback and get clarification on anything that maybe isn't making sense. But these are usually a 15 to 20 page report,
right,
broken out by the months. So they're pretty detailed. Well, I don't know about detail, but they're very customized, and it's a lot of information. So it's another piece of information. And I have some people that will do those every year because that's, they want that extra piece to work with.
Right.
And
well, it becomes that kind of the compass, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's another piece of like, okay, the world is doing this, but what's happening for me personally?
How do I fit in
this? To be
this?
going okay in the world, why am I having all of these challenges, or vice versa? And so understanding those, again, that can really help us to move with the foresight, gear it for the month, and really maximize the energy and the potential and the blessings that are available to us.
So, my love, how do people get hold of you if they want to book one of those, so they want to see what else you've got? Where do they get the book? We've got the Smash one. That link will be on here as well. But for the current book, where did they get it, and how did they get hold of you? How did they book you for a speaking engagement, etc.?
Absolutely. I think one of the easiest ways, Sarah, is to go right onto my website, compassioncodes.com. And in the website, they can explore different things. They'll see some testimonials. They can make a request for the Genesis clearing statement. They can look at the book. All the links for the books are on there. They just go to the goods tab. They'll see one for the code journey. They can click on that. A lot of people also like the Activating Compassion book that was done by Jesse, and they can go on, click that, and find those as well. I have videos on there that every month I do kind of a video based around what the code currents are and giving some just insights and how to deal with those currents and things like that that are happening. So they've got a wealth of resources there that they can do. They can contact me through the website. They can also message me on Facebook. So
LinkedIn,
pretty easy to reach out to in that sense.
Well, every village in the past used to have a wise woman that you would go to. You're the modern day wise woman. So you're there to help.
I am that. I hope to be that.
You're that. You've got the wisdom to be able to see what people need to know. How to navigate. We're all on this. Our journey is a solo journey, but there are people around you all the time that can give you the tools to put in your backpack so you know how to walk your journey, when to pull out those tools, or that perspective, or that wisdom, the way you meet somebody along the road. Nobody's there to walk it for you or do it for you, but they can help fortify you along the way and guide you with their wisdom. And you're one of those people with an abundance of wisdom, ready to guide people forward. So, never mind just the book. of, what do they, doing the codes for the year. It becomes that kind of compass. Okay, this is, for me, I'm going to write a book in 2022. I have no idea if it's the right year to do it, but I'm doing it, and if you do know, yeah, that's the good year to do it. Follow those instincts. That's a good year. Oh no, this isn't the year, because these are the things in your way, and you really need to be in that direction and not that direction. And it could save so much more, less grief of making the wrong decision or going down the wrong way, and being more in flow and in tuned with oneself in going in the right direction. So people have got to reach out to you. They've got to reach out to you. Right. And they've got to go back and listen to all the other shows that we've done and get the book for 21 to actually know what sequence we're in right now, because it's not about, January 1st, there is a new energy now. No, the energy is brought over. What flow, what frequency are we in? Right. And how do we kind of catch up to it and make sure that flow is there so that we can be in balance and help Earth get into balance again?
And, I want to mention to people that they can jump into this work at any time.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like you have to go back and reread everything. You can just jump into where we're at. And in the book, in the beginning, where I talk about the yearly influences in it, because it's broken down where I have the story of how the codes wisdom opened up here on in this space, and a little bit about them, what they are, and then the year influences, and then I break it down by the months, and within the months there's the monthly energy, and then the full moon and the new moon energy, and then the extra portals like meteorite showers, solstices, equinoxes, things like that, and then angel influences, and then daily influences in there.
That's the reason why it's so thick.
Because there's so much to know. But in the yearly influences, I will break it down and show, here's the pattern that we're in for this 5-year cycle, and here's how it's playing out this year.
Right.
But like you say, it's kind of good because these code patterns are always coming up. And I think that's one of the great lessons out of this book, is you learn how to deal with these different patterns. So no matter where the energy is at, when you see that pattern surface in your life, you understand after working with the book a little bit, oh, this is a pattern that is about deception. So this is what I need to do. This is a pattern that's about materialism. So this is what I need to do. And you learn how to deal with those patterns in the process, but you're learning them through your own way of doing things.
Yeah,
so it's not about somebody is going to try to do it my way. They're going to learn how to implement that wisdom in their life, in their way, in how it plays out for them.
It's kind of what you said right in the beginning, is that, don't judge people for what they're thinking or doing. It's because that's what they have been shown and known, right? So it is kind of looking at something and trying to understand it in its now, and what it means to you now and what it will mean to you tomorrow because of the now. And it's really kind of getting in flow, becoming in tuned, getting on the right vibe. And when you are, then you can follow that vibe and that flow and see and know that you're on the right track.
And it's so helpful. And I'm so grateful that I have people all around the world working with this book. I'm so grateful that I have people who are very young and people that are much more mature in life working with this. I have people who are just starting on their unfolding of their own wisdom and journeys and paths. And I have people who have been on their paths for decades that are big influencers like you in the world. And so I feel very grateful, because to me, that's a beautiful reflection that this work is meeting people wherever they are at, and it will continue to grow with them, with however they choose to grow and what different things they choose to explore in life. And that's where I know I have something of true, pure, divine wisdom.
Yes.
Because it doesn't matter about the age or the culture or the background or the point of the path or any of that. It just works.
Exactly. Compassion, codes.com. Please go and immerse yourself into her site. Start following the things every day. Maybe we go and get the other book from last year and kind of see where we are on track. Most certainly get this book this year. Make it a family affair where everybody's going to kind of read it. What does it mean to them, etc. If you want to have your own personal kind of coding done for the year, reach out to her, because this woman is dedicated. She channels it true. She really comes from her core. And so please, you'll do yourself a favor by listening and learning and definitely being interactive with her. To start off with, everything that she's got, just go eeny, meeny, miny, moe, I'll take the whole lot. Thank you so much, Anne, for being here again. It's always a delight. I love doing this every year, and just you always partake so much of that divine wisdom, that you openly channel, and we need it. It's guidance. We would be flapping in the wind if we didn't have people to guide us, and you're guiding us. So thank you for being that guide.
It's a pleasure to do that, and I'm very happy to be, like I said, offering this up. And thank you so much for having me back. It's always a great gift to be on your show, and again to share this out with people.
See you next year. Remember, folks, there is a beautiful rhythm out there, and we need to find balance within ourselves so that Earth can find balance, the universe can find balance. We let that divine source energy come through us, and just be open and ready to receive, and let guide you through that process, because you're not alone. You're never alone. And sometimes just somebody being able to lay it out, good time, bad time, or this is what's happening, helps you make the right choices for you on your journey of life. Until next time, folks, bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show. You will hear many, many shows here on selfdiscoverymedia.com. We have new shows for you out every week. Just find them on our podcast or What's New. If you feel that you have something to share that makes a difference in the lives of others, or you too feel that you could be a host, please contact me at info@selfdiscoverymedia.com, and we will be glad to speak with you. Have a wonderful day.